What's going on, y'all? Every day means every day, episode number 13. And tonight, I just want to tell you a story. I wanted to connect with you a little bit less of a motivational video and more of just a heart to heart, and want to open up about a season in my life when I received some advice that quite literally changed the trajectory of my entire life with one single decision, by the way. And this started back when I was in college. I was about 20, 21 years old, and I was just going through it. If you know anything about my story, you know that I moved from a small town called Huntsville, Alabama, all the way across the country, left my parents and everything that I knew behind, moved across the country to Ann Arbor, Michigan to attend the University of Michigan. And my goal and my dream was to compete for the men's gymnastics team at U of M. And my first year, I was on the team as a redshirt freshman. Now, redshirt means I was on the team technically, but I didn't get to compete. I wasn't quite good enough. And I kept training, and I was always showing up early. I was staying late. I was doing everything that, you hear about in these motivational speeches, everything that you read about in the books. I was doing everything quote unquote right. I wasn't drinking. I wasn't partying. I was very focused on the goal, and I was putting in more time than anybody else. I can confidently say that. I was putting in more time in the gym, 2 days every single day. I was training with the club gymnastics team. I was doing extra lifting and conditioning on my own time. I was doing everything that I possibly could have done. And I know for a fact that I was putting in more time to accomplish this goal than anybody else on that team, including the scholarship guys. And that's not a knock on them. I'm just trying to illustrate to you how committed and dedicated I was to trying to achieve that goal of competing for the University of Michigan men's gymnastics team. But turns out, after a year of doing this, after my redshirt period was over, I ended up getting cut from that team every single year for the subsequent 4 years. And I tried out every single time. So 5 years total, I tried out every single year. My first year, I was redshirted, didn't compete. And after that, every single year, I was cut from the team. And it sounds really quick and easy to say, yeah, I was cut from the team 4 times in 5 years. But I think sometimes the depth of that experience gets lost when sometimes I tell it so quickly. Like 4 times in 5 years, cut from the team. It's a quick tagline, but at the end of the day, that's 5 years of my life. When you're 20, that's a quarter of your life. You don't even really remember the first 5 years of your life. So it's like a third of your life, you know? And I had committed myself. I committed not just my body, but my heart, my spirit, my soul to achieving this thing. And it never worked out. So psychologically, I was crushed, right? Everybody back home that said, man, what are you doing leaving this small town, going out there chasing these big dreams? You're not going to make it. It's not going to work. I proved all of them right. And I proved myself wrong. Not to mention year after year after year, there's that psychological stress of, am I going to make the team this year? Of wondering why I'm not good enough, wondering if I'm doing something wrong, wondering if this whole thing was a mistake. There's the physical stress of injuries. My AC joints on both shoulders were separated at one point. I've torn both of my TFCCs in both of my wrists, had this one entirely reconstructed. I mean, I was going through it physically, mentally, spiritually. I'm looking at God like, okay, what are we doing here? You know? And all the while, there's these circumstances happening back home with my family. Obviously, finances still weren't great. So I knew that my parents were still struggling back home. My dad got diagnosed with cancer twice. He's technically my stepdad. I'm going to continue to refer to him as my dad. He came into the equation pretty much before I was born, moved in with us when I was probably 2 years old. So that's the man that raised me. That's my role model. That's my Superman. And so that's I call him dad. But he got cancer twice. He beat it twice. Just recently, actually got a third time, beat it a third time. But that's aside the point. Back in those days, it was only twice. My mom was diagnosed with an incurable autoimmune disease. My girlfriend at the time was sexually assaulted. I mean, it's just so many different things that in that time of my life, for a 20-year-old, and when you're 20, especially when you grew up the way that I did, I was already paying my own bills. I had financial aid, but other than that, it's not like I didn't have a rich uncle that was helping me out. I didn't have anybody in my family that was covering things for me. So I felt like an adult because I was managing my finances. I was managing my schedule. I was managing all these different temptations that come about in college, and I was doing a pretty good job of it all in all. But I really thought that I was an adult, and I don't care what kind of life you've lived. I don't care how much adversity you've had to overcome, how much responsibility you've had to take on way prematurely before you should. But a 20-year-old is still a 20-year-old. And I know if you're in that age range, you're listening to this right now, you're going to hate the fact that I'm saying this. And you're going to think that you're the exception, but you're a kid. You're a kid. And there's just certain things that you should not have to deal with as a kid. And I felt like in those moments, the world was just crashing down on me from every possible direction. Finances, family health issues, my own athletic career, my own anxiety and depression. Like everywhere I looked, the world seemed like it was caving in on me. So I needed some motivation. I go to YouTube. I type in motivational speeches. What do I hear? This guy on YouTube yelling about, when you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe. It was Eric Thomas, Dr. Eric Thomas, E.T. And I start just binge watching all of his stuff. Something about the way that he spoke. Something about the way that his voice resonated with my spirit. It moved me. And so I started watching his content. Funny enough, I had been sort of familiar with him when I was in my teenage years, but I had let it go. I had let that personal development thing go because I was just all in on this gymnastics stuff. And I rediscovered ET during this time period. I binge watch everything I can, listen to all the podcasts, all the YouTube videos. I read all the audiobooks, listen to all the audiobooks. I'm consuming as much of this stuff as I can. And because I'm doing that, of course, the algorithm recognizes that. It says, hey, this kid seems to like all this content. Let's run ads to him. So when ET began to run ads for a one-on-one consultation for $250, your boy was one of the first people to get hit with the ad. Now, keep in mind, when I saw this one-on-one consult with ET for $250, I didn't know ET. I didn't know if he would be the same person in real life as he was on YouTube. I was making $100 a week working for the same team that I've been cut from, cleaning trophies on my hands and knees while my boys were in the room 30 feet next to me practicing, living out my dreams. And for whatever reason, I decided that I was going to invest that $250, which was pretty much all the liquid cash that I had at the time. I was going to invest that $250, and I was going to do the one-on-one call with ET. I get on the phone with him. I tell him my situation. He ends up finding out through the course of this conversation that I live in Ann Arbor, Michigan. He currently lives in Lansing, Michigan. He said, it's only an hour and 15 minutes away. If you'll come meet me for breakfast at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'll sit down with you in person. I said, no problem. Now, remember, it's an hour and 15 minutes away, so I got to be up at like 2:30 to make this thing happen. I'd never been up that early in my entire life. I set a million different alarms, had a pot of coffee ready to go, so I just chugged it on the way over there. And I drive out there in my 2010, I think, Nissan Altima Coupe that's barely running sometimes. The electronics would mess up because it was flooded, so sometimes it would just shut off while you were driving, and it would just stop working. It was a death trap. And I'm driving out there, and I pull up to the Sophia's Pancakes is the place that it's called. And I see this giant extended wheelbase, black on black, tinted windows Escalade pull up. I'm like, it's gotta be E.T. And he hops out of the car, daps me up. We hug. You know, first time I've ever met him. We go inside and he changed my life just in that small conversation. We talked about spirituality. We talked about God. We talked about purpose. We talked about so many different things. And from that point forward, I started volunteering for him. And I just get closer and closer and closer. And I ended up going to an event that he has called the Success Series. It used to be called The Advantage. And if you've ever heard the when you want to succeed as bad as you want to breathe speech, that's actually where that speech took place. It's a free event that he does at Michigan State University every Monday. He still does it to this day. And I found out about that and I said, you know what? I've got to get there. So for 2 years straight, my 4th year and my 5th year of college, my 5th year and my 6th year of college, because my 6th year I wasn't actually in school, but I was still coaching at Michigan for the gymnastics team. I would wake up at around 6. I'd go to morning practice with the guys from 7 to 8. I'd go to class from around 8 to noon. I'd be back in the gym coaching from 2 to about 5:30. I'd get in the car at 5:30. I'd drive to Michigan State. I'd watch and listen to E.T. do his thing. And I would never stick around to say hello to him afterwards because I'd get back in the car, drive back to Ann Arbor, and go coach personal training sessions at night to pay for the gas that I was using to get back and forth. Did that for 2 years straight. Only missed 2 of those Success Series presentations, both of which were for family stuff that I really needed to be there for. And the very last Success Series that I went to, I decided I was going to shoot my shot. Now, this was in 2020, March of 2020. And I was set to graduate in April. I didn't really have a plan. I knew I couldn't speak. I was very socially anxious. I mean, to the point where I would sit there and I would listen to E.T.'s speeches at the Success Series, and I wouldn't even make eye contact with him because he does a lot of call and response. And I was so afraid of saying something or being forced to answer a question in front of this room full of people that I wouldn't even look him in the eye. I'm sitting here listening, just taking my notes, making sure he can't see me, you know? So that's how socially anxious I was. I couldn't articulate myself very well. I couldn't speak. I was certainly not extroverted. I didn't have that kind of personality. So I couldn't speak, but I could always write. I was a gifted writer. And so I took all these ideas that I had about philosophy, psychology, motivation, and I wrote them all down. 60 pages from start to finish. And then I added on a cover letter, put my disc assessment in there because I knew he was big on personality tests. Cover letter, resume, disc assessment, 60 pages worth of writing. And I said, maybe if I give this to E.T., it'll convince him to give me a shot and give me an opportunity. Because he was the first person that I ever saw who was making a ton of money, but was also genuinely helping people. He had this spirit of authenticity to him, and that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a speaker at all, but I knew that I wanted to help people. And I knew that I wanted to make a lot of money and be successful doing it. But I didn't feel like those two things necessarily had to contradict. Everybody told me, yeah, you can go into investment banking and be some corporate baron and screw people over for a living and make a lot of money, or you can go be Mother Teresa, but it's like, where's the middle ground here? And E.T. was the first person that I saw who exemplified that middle ground. So I decided I was going to present him with this 60-page document at the end of the night at the Success Series, and that was going to be my pitch to him to give me an opportunity. At the end of the presentation, he does something different. Again, he always sticks around for autographs, photos, whatever, answer questions. He says, remember this is March of 2020. He goes, guys, I'm so sorry. I know I usually stick around at the end. I can't do it tonight. I keep hearing about this coronavirus thing. I'm sure it's nothing, but my wife has MS and I can't take the risk of me getting sick and me giving it back to her. I'll see you guys next week. Don't worry about it. That was the last in-person event that he did for about 2 years. 3 days later, the entire world shut down. Something told me in my spirit that I could not let that opportunity go. Now, he went out the back of the auditorium that we were in. I knew I couldn't just chase after him. Somebody would tackle me. He's famous and you can't just do that stuff. So I left my backpack, my laptop, everything, people I was with, left him right there in the auditorium. I sprinted up 2 flights of stairs, ran around the building, and I beat him to his car. I knew what kind of car he drove. I knew where he parked every week. And so I beat him to his car. So now he's coming out of the building. I'm standing between this man and his car. You got to talk to me. And I'm so glad I did this when I was 20 and not 40. Because if I'd done it when I was 40, I probably would have been arrested. And I had this whole script in my mind of what I was going to try and tell him to convince him to give me a shot. And it all went straight out the window, right? I'm nervous as all get out. And it's cold. It's windy. It's raining because it's March in Michigan. And that's what it does. And I just said, I made this for you. I will do anything for an opportunity. Right there on the spot, he committed to giving me an unpaid internship. No, we didn't talk responsibilities. We didn't talk about what I was going to be doing. It just unpaid internship. Sure. Signed, sealed, delivered. Let's go. I worked for him for the next 4 months during the summer of COVID. And the part of the story that I haven't told you yet is that I had a standing job offer to go coach gymnastics in Houston, Texas. And the guy who owned the gym had been the coach of the United States men's Olympic team for the past 12 years. It was going to be a fast track to become the next big thing in USA Gymnastics in terms of coaching. And I was good at it, and I would have loved it. It's not like that was a menial job to me. I love to coach. It's what I do now in a different capacity, but coaching is my passion. It's what I was put here to do. So I really, really had to consider that. The job offer was for $60,000, which is more than my parents have ever made in a year combined. And I called my dad, Superman. I said, Dad, I don't know what to do. I really think that I want to pursue this opportunity with ET. I don't know why. I just feel called towards it. But this coaching thing, phenomenal opportunity. What do you think I should do? I'll never forget this. My dad said, son, if you start with nothing and you lose it all, do the math. You will never have an opportunity like this again. As much responsibility as you think that you have, as heavy as you feel like your life is right now, you will never again have the type of freedom where you can take a risk like this. And if it doesn't work, it's okay. You don't have a wife and kids. You don't have people that you're responsible for. You'll be all right. And you know what? You're 22 at this point, 21, 22. If you got to sleep on a friend's couch for a few months, it'll be okay. Society will forgive you. If you start with nothing and lose it all, do the math. I called my guy in Houston that same day. I said, sir, I'm so grateful for this opportunity, but I can't do it right now. I've got this other thing and I've got to chase it. I've got to see where it goes. Continued to work for ET throughout the summer of COVID for free. And a few months later, I woke up to a text at 4 o'clock in the morning. It said, how much do you want to make in your first year full time? By the way, I took that for 50 grand a year. So it was a pay cut compared to what I was going to get. And from there, I climbed the ranks. From there, I started I started out with spreadsheets and customer service. I ended up working in business development, then became his agent, then launched my own career and launched multiple businesses out of that experience. What's my point? If you start with nothing and lose it all, do the math. So especially if you're a young person right now and you're watching this, I just want to encourage you, take a risk. Take a risk and bet on yourself. Take the job that's got the lower pay. Do the risky thing. Move to the city that you don't know anybody in. Do the thing that makes absolutely no sense and do it just for the sake that it feels right and you feel like there might be an opportunity on the other end of it. Do it because you feel called towards it, not because it makes the most sense, not because you have the highest starting salary and you can buy a BMW and flex on your friends. Do it because you're called to it. Do it because right now you can afford to be recklessly ambitious. Do it. And I think even if you're not a young person listening to this, even if you just feel like you got nothing to lose, you understand how dangerous that makes you? You understand how many things you can afford to try that so many other people, they're terrified. They live in constant fear of losing whatever it is that they have. You got your nice little car, your nice little apartment, and you're so afraid to lose it and look stupid to your friends that you're not taking any risks. You're not innovating. You're not evolving. You are free. If you feel like you have nothing, you're free. If you feel like there's the world stacked against you, you're free. If you feel like all the odds are against you, you're free. If you feel like nothing's going your way, you're free. You're free to be your genuine, authentic self and take as many risks as that really entails, because being yourself is a risk. Following your passions is a risk. Starting that business is a risk. Asking that girl out is a risk. It's all a risk. Here's my final point. I said if you're a young person, take that risk because you'll never be able to do it again without the responsibility that comes later in life. I said even if you're not young but you feel like you've got nothing to lose, take the risk. My last point is this. Don't we all have nothing to lose? Don't we all start with nothing and lose it all anyway? I mean, you've never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse. That's what the quote says, right? That's what people say. You'll never see a U-Haul behind a hearse. So you lose it all anyway. So if there's something that's tugging at your soul, why would you not listen to that? I always explain to people like this. Money and success is not real. I mean, money is a man-made concept. Money is not real. It's not real. It doesn't carry any metaphysical energy to it that makes it this spiritual concept. It's a freaking piece of paper. Not even these days, it's not even a piece of paper. It's a 1 or a 0 on a computer screen. And it's all going away. When you die, they're going to tax it. I mean, what's the point of it? Sit there and watch it pile up in the bank. I mean, listen, I'm not telling you that money's not important. Of course it's important. It buys you opportunity and freedom and a little bit of peace of mind that is difficult to get if you don't have it. But at the end of the day, we're not talking about something that's everlasting. We're not talking about something that truly is fundamental to reality. We're not talking about something that is genuinely substantive in the final analysis. But I believe that the human spirit is. I believe that the human soul is. I think that your spirit being given permission to pursue what it feels called towards is far more real than an extra $40,000 in salary. I mean, for God's sakes, if you're exchanging something that's not real for something that is real, wouldn't you do that exchange every day of the week? You're going to exchange something that means absolutely nothing for something that could mean absolutely everything? Somebody asked me the other day, I just took my mom on a vacation around Europe. We went to London, Paris, Rome, and Vatican City in the span of 6 days. Somebody asked me, man, wasn't that expensive? I was like, well, if you look at it financially, yeah, it was expensive. But the effect, the impact that had on my mom, that changed her. You understand what I'm telling you? That changed her spirit. That changed the essence of who she is as a human being. That's a memory that's going to last for the rest of her life, and I believe into the next. That's something that's real. That's something that lasts. That's something that means something. $5,000 or $6,000 is not going to last. That's not going to mean anything. That's not real. So again, I'm exchanging something that's not real for something that is as real and substantive and important and meaningful as it gets. Why would I not make that? I don't care if I put it on a credit card. Are you stupid? It's the only logical decision. If you have the opportunity to do something like that, you do it. And you don't let this limited mentality that the world has forced on so many of us talk you out of it. You don't do that. Because if you do, you're going to be looking back on it. Like imagine, doctors say my mom's probably got 6 years to live. 5, 6, 7, I don't know. And the doctors are not God. So we're going to choose to believe otherwise until it's absolutely unavoidable. But imagine 10 years from now, my mom's not here anymore. And I look back on that moment and say, man, I had the opportunity to do it and I didn't because I would have gotten anxious over like being squeezed to make rent that month. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine the pain? It's making me emotional just thinking about it. The pain and regret that I would feel. The stupidity that I would feel from being concerned over a couple grand here and there. And I know this might sound, if you're really struggling right now financially, I know that this is like the last thing that you want to hear. And I understand that. I've been there. I've had my credit cards canceled because I was in so much debt. I have been where you have been. Trust me. Trust me. But when you look back on your life, you're not going to be thinking about your credit cards. You're not going to be thinking about, man, you remember when I was 14 days late on rent that one month and it got real stressful and I had to borrow money, but I figured it out eventually. I always do. 10 years from now, you're not going to be thinking about that. You're going to be thinking about the things and the moments and the memories that made a difference in you and the lives of the people that you love. So with that being said, we all lose it all. We all start with nothing. And we all lose it all. Do the math.